Good evening, guys. This is Thomas Aarons from Aarons Bassin. I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks that I like to do in the wintertime to help with those finicky wintertime fish, especially if they're really keying in on bait, threadfin shad, blueback herring, things like that. So here are probably the two most well-known baits possible for the wintertime, the jerk baits. We got a short-billed one. This is a Kevin Van Dam Strike King Sexy Shad. And here is a Rapala shadow wrap with a deep bill. Now, if we're chasing bait, for example, would be Lake Kiwi, 2015 National Championship, and pre-fishing, we were able to really find clumps of bait out in 30 to 40 feet of water, and they were over top of 50 to 60 feet of water in troughs. And a lot of times, we were able to get some really nice spotted bass using a deeper diving bill like this one, trying to get down towards that school when the fish were compressed. When the fish were very active and closer to the surface, we were able to really smack them good with this shorter bill jerkbait. But again, there are some times when those fish just turn off. They don't want the jerkbait. They're going to chase it, they're going to shadow it, but they're not going to commit. And you get this a lot of times with smallmouth too. Smallmouth bass are notorious for following a bait but not committing to it. When this happens and you run into an issue where they were eating the jerkbait really well and then all of a sudden they shut off, a lot of times the best thing that you can follow up with is a soft plastic jerkbait a fluke type presentation. I learned about this and how deadly it was actually at the Chesapeake Bay, believe it or not, up in the Susquehanna when we were fishing at regionals. And what would happen is the smallmouth bass that we were keying in on to fill our limit, they were smoking the jerkbait, especially this size right here. They were smoking that, but then they turned off from it. They were following but wouldn't commit. Switching to the fluke style bait really helped us out. But the biggest problem with the fluke is the type of hook you usually use for it. You're going to usually use an offset hook like this. Makes it a very nice weedless presentation, which is fantastic for grass, lily pads, things of that ilk, but the hookup percentage is terrible. It's really bad. So the tip I'm going to show you today is a way that you can turn this into a fish catching machine just like this right here. And I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do this. The first one, you can go with a weightless presentation, especially if they're up on the surface. You'll see this a lot at Lake Murray, Hartwell, places like that where there's blueback, that the fish will still push up even in the cold water, and you can get some on the surface. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your J hook. I got one right over here. And you're going to get your treble hook. I like a triple grip or a finesse style treble hook. And I'll talk to you about the circumstances in which I use a triple grip or a wide J hook or a finesse in another video. But you're going to take a hook like this, and you're going to take your rubber stoppers that you would use a trailer hook, or I like to use just a rubber band. You're going to thread your thing on just like that, and then you're going to put right like that. And then from here, again, depending on your fluke variation, you can shove that up the nose of the bait right there. There you go. Voila. And the thing I love about this presentation is, especially if you're fishing open water, you're fishing bait, they were committing to the jerk bait, whether, for example, this would mimic really well with the shallow diving jerk. They were already committing to this and you're having great success with that. But when this thing stops, it either doesn't sink or it stays stationary. With this thing, it has the texture of a bait fish. This has a fantastic resemblance to a threadfin shad, and a little bit bigger would be a blueback. But when you stop this, it's going to flutter down. And a lot of times when those fish stop hitting this, just changing to this, that little flutter action, will really trigger those fish and get them to start chewing again. And again, what I like about having the treble hook here is it now fishes a lot like the hard one. A lot of times when you're fishing a jerk bait, it's more of like when you come back tight is when you feel the fish, and you don't have a chance to set the hook. Well, when you're fishing without treble hook here, you have to feel them, give it to them, and then whack them. With the treble hook on here, now this thing fishes just like a hard plastic. Now, what if they're not on the surface? This is going to fish well in that first couple of inches, maybe 12 inches of water. Well, there's two other ways you can rig it. The first you can use is basically a weighted swim bait hook. This works pretty well. The biggest issue I have with it is with these little screw-ons here. You can epoxy it, you can screw it in, but it's going to tear up the nose of your bait. I've come up with a better solution, and this has caught me a buttload of fish in the wintertime. And this is one of my trade secrets I'm going to give up now. One thing I love to use, I'll get it up here. This right here is a fish head spin. Okay? What this is a prop just like you'd see on a spy bait. And a spy bait, if you haven't looked at it, I'll have a video on that coming up here in another week or two. But this is a very finesse Japanese technique for coaxing finicky fish. And this prop will just slowly spin in the water. So instead of just using a regular jig head, I add this to add a little bit more vibration. But then what I'll do is I'll take my fluke, just like this. I'm going to start threading it on there. Okay? Thread it on there like that. Now, once it pops free a little bit, see that right there? I'm going to take my treble hook and my swivel right there, and I'm just going to thread the hook tip right over that ring. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the hook, and I'm going to continue to thread it through the bait straight as possible, and then pop it out just like that. Now pull her all the way up there, and I'm going to slide this down a little bit. And then what I would do if I was actually fishing, I'd touch this with some super glue. Boom. And try to get that just as flush as possible on there. Just like that. And then I'm going to pull this down just like that. And then there you have it. And this right here is by far one of my trade secrets for coaxing wintertime fish out. If they were hitting a jerkbait, you can go with something like this, and this can be fished two different ways. I can just slow roll this thing, and the blades will actually give this thing a nice little wobble back and forth. The other way I can do it is I can let this drop, and I can just fish it like a jerkbait. And what's nice is it's my point of contact, is like what I like to call it. I have a point of contact here with the fish, and then I have the point of contact with the treble hook here. If that fish tries to shark the bait, I'm going to get him with the treble hook down here. If he tries to engulf it, I'm going to hit him with this point of contact here. And if they're deeper, if the fish sink back down into the school, again, you're fishing 30 feet of water, they're underneath the bait ball. They turned off of the big jerk bait here. I would go with a jig head, I'd epoxy the fluke on there, and then I would just go with a trailer hook, just like this, a treble hook just like this. Again, treble hook doesn't have to be way too big. It's more of just having that stinger hook there that really helps. So don't go crazy with the size of your treble hook. Well, guys, I really hope this video helped out. Hopefully you guys can get out there. These tips and tricks will be able to help you guys catch a couple more fish. Again, if you don't follow us, try to follow us on Facebook at Shenandoah Bass Fishing. You can also follow us at Aaron's Bassin on YouTube and Aaron's Bassin on Instagram. Thanks.